That day Mark came home to find Annie crying on the sofa. It turned out that their child was about to start school. However, the school was required to shave the boy's head. The rest of their life was a happy one. In their spare time, they often took their children on holidays to the seaside. The family thought they would be happy forever. But on this day, Mark stood in front of the radio with a heavy face. The atmosphere of the whole city seemed to be particularly heavy. It turned out that the invaders had begun to build up troops around them and perhaps a war was about to break out. To be on the safe side, Mark boarded up the windows of his house and filled the gaps with glue. Then the family put on gas masks. It was the only way they could feel safe. But it wasn't long before the air raid sirens went off and the war began. The family hugged each other nervously. But that day, the government announced it would evacuate millions of children from the city, even though Anne was reluctant to leave. But for safety reasons, they finally put the children on the train. And Annie, as a mother, was forced to part with her 5-year-old. How much pain must have been in her heart at that moment. Back home, Mark built a shelter in the backyard. The next day, Mark was assigned to the fire service. He was in the middle of a smoky, dangerous city, and Annie joined the backup team. Every day was scary for them. The only consolation they could find was a letter from their son. But the turmoil has left the family in shambles. Even the fence in front of the house is being taken down and turned into shells. To make Annie feel better, Mark said he'd build a wooden fence tomorrow. But the war was brutal. One dark night, their house was not spared. So they thought they'd take the time to fix up the house and see the boy they hadn't seen in a long time. The boy had already adjusted to life in the country. The moment they met, the family smiled. They also dreamed of having a cottage here. But the house in the city still had a mortgage of over 20 years. When he came back to the city, Mark immediately built a metal cage. When he got inside, it was just the right size. It turned out to be a new bed for them to sleep in at night. But then the air raid sirens went off. Mark blew out the candles, and despite his own fears, he held his wife tightly in his arms.